Okay, so I have been thinking about this a lot and reading about this a lot and basically wondering what it was about Trump or his policies or his campaign that attracted more Black people, that is attracting more Black people in 2024 than were attracted in 2020. Now, these are small percentages. It went from 9% to 12%, and most of that was Black men. Here's what I thought. I thought there's a lot of homophobia in the Black community, and Democrats coming out for trans rights and LGBTQ rights and being very upfront about that, and that part of the cultural war probably turned off a lot of older uh, church going African Americans. I thought that was it. Well, today, July 15th, the New York Times actually did a focus group of Black men to ask them what it was that they were attracted to about Trump or why they were supporting him in the 2024 election. And the ignorance is absolutely astounding. Just astounding, the pure ignorance. So I want to go over this article and just highlight a couple of things that blew my mind, just blew my mind. So let's get into it. So let's just start at the very beginning. What word do you think of when you think of Donald Trump? Courageous, unfiltered, respected. Courageous. This man used bone spurs as an excuse to get out of going to the Vietnam War. Not, I'm a conscientious objector, didn't go the Muhammad Ali route, right? This war is crap, but bone spurs. To me, that's not courage. Unfiltered. That's completely true. I don't have anything to say about that. Respected. By who? By who? Um, in Mitch McConnell's biography, he talks about how he went to numerous GOP leaders in the House and Senate privately, and privately they told him how much they disrespected Donald Trump, but were literally afraid of his followers, as in afraid that their families or themselves might be shot or attacked. That is not respect, that's fear. Those are two different things. That's just a weird word, in my view, to be the first thing you think of when you think of Donald Trump. But there it is. What would you say is most off track in the United States today? Leadership. Okay. Yeah. Morality. If you thought morality was the thing that's off in the United States today, why would you support a man who has had 3 wives and each one of those wives he got by cheating on the wife before that? Except maybe the first one. The second and third wife he got because he was having an affair. Why would you support a man who he and his father ended up being in the biggest prosecution in the state of New York for unfair housing practices because they were purposely trying not to rent to Black people? If you thought morality was the thing that was wrong, that was getting the United States off track today. The next guy said the economy. Okay, if you thought the economy was the thing that's off today, why would you vote for a man that when he was president last time did a transfer of wealth upward to the top 1% through massive tax cuts for the rich that directly impacted the raising of taxes on middle and lower class people? Why would you do that? The cult of progressivism. What does that even mean? Um, I yeah, I'm a progressive myself. I don't think I'm in a cult, but maybe he'll explain that further down. Um, and then the last guy says morality. And again, if you thought morality was the issue on why the United States was off track, why would Donald Trump be your preferred candidate? When you decide how to vote, what's the most important issue that comes to mind? Leadership and competency. Was this gentleman paying attention to how the Trump administration handled COVID? Leadership and competency. Does this gentleman remember when Jared Kushner purposely tried to keep emergency protective equipment from going to blue states? Leadership and competency. Um, the border. So if you thought the border was the most important issue, and that's a legitimate issue for a lot of people, Trump promised a border wall during his first term. It did not get built all the way, and the parts that were built shabbily. So why would you support a man that didn't actually fulfill his promise that he gave? Oh, and he said Mexico would pay for it, which they did not. Why would you support Trump when he made promises about the border in his first run as president and did not fulfill any of those promises? Tell me more about that. And the gentleman that answers, the one that said he was most interested in the border as his voting issue, and the one that said he was most interested in crime. So I'm going to take the second one first. If crime is the number one issue on your mind when you vote, why are you voting for the party, regardless of whether or not Trump is the nominee? Why are you voting for the party that refuses to do anything about gun violence? If you think that homelessness is the driver of crime, why are you voting for the party that repeatedly tried to overturn Obamacare, which is not what it should be, but at least gives some mental health coverage to help people get off of the mental health issues and addiction issues that were making them homeless? Why would you try to get rid of the party that at least is trying to do a little bit to help people get out of the cycle of being addicted and being homeless because of it, if you thought that homelessness was a driver of crime? And then I want you to read what the gentleman said, why he was interested in the border. My cousin's a school teacher, and her school, a private school, had to house some, I don't know if they're legals, but I just know they were families that came from the border. She has 4 kids, and all of her kids go to that same school, and none of these people had background checks or anything like that. It was just a safety concern. I'm down here in Georgia, and I felt hopeless in a way that I couldn't help her or be there for my little nieces and nephews. Okay, so this private school that your nieces and nephews went to was used to house um, refugees from the border. What I want to know is, were they were those all those people integrated into the school to where they had access to the students, or were they in a completely separate building? And yeah, what exactly was the danger that you felt? Did you feel that some of the adults that were housed in the school could have been pedophiles or whatever? And if so, did those adults actually have access to the children in the school? Like, what basically, I would like to know more about that situation to know if the worry was legitimate. Was he worried about disease? Because he said background checks, not health checks. And I thought, oh, he's worried about them bringing coughing and bringing COVID to his niece and nephew. But he said background checks, not health checks. So I don't know. It just seems like a very nebulous type of fear for the very specific situation. Is there an area that you think candidates are not focusing on? Education. If you thought that education was the area that candidates are not focusing on, why would you vote for a candidate whose 2025 plan includes getting rid of the Department of Education? I don't know. How the majority of the programs that are being used where I live in Long Beach, California, but also in um, Los Angeles Unified School District, to help the kids that are behind because of COVID and having homeschooling are funded by grants from the state and from the Department of Education. And if the federal money ran out, those programs would have to shrink, or they'd serve the same number of kids, but not for as long. So if he even says, as you can read on the screen, that, hey, the kids are behind and no one's talking about it. Okay, if that was your issue, and that is like a legit issue, why would you vote for the party whose plan includes getting rid of the Department of Education? Even if they're not able to do it, it's their intention to do it. So how does that jive? And then healthcare. Again, if you thought that healthcare was the biggest issue, why would you vote for the party that repeatedly tried to overturn Obamacare, which expanded healthcare to many people who did not have it previously? So then the moderator asks them if they feel they've moved in a more liberal direction or a more conservative direction, and whether or not they haven't moved at all. And the first guy, as you can read, says that he thinks progressives are group thinkers and that they base their groupthink on emotion. I would imagine it's emotion rather than facts. And the examples he gives are race relations and climate change. Now, the Earth, I'm not talking about the United States, the Earth has had its hottest days on record every year in the last 5 years. It's been, the Earth had its hottest days on record ever in 2020. And then in 2021, the Earth had its hottest days on record ever in 2021. And then in 2022, the Earth had it just keeps going up and up. I'm not going to go over how fire season in California has expanded. I'm not going to go over how hurricane season in Hurricane Alley in the United States has expanded. The fact that he says that people who are fired up about climate change are dealing from emotion and not from actual data that keeps coming in, by the way, data that the Pentagon is taking seriously, data that insurers are taking seriously. To me, that's just ignorant. Then the second guy says that he did his thesis on reparations, but then decided that reparations was kind of an identity more than an actual ideal. So I think there is a lot of, on social media, a lot of this whole um, descendants of African slaves versus other types of Black people in the United States conversation that goes on around reparations. But I don't see how you could do your thesis on reparation and look at the history of how Black people were kept from economic advancement and then say, that's basically hope, just an identity. It's not real. Like, to me, that is so ignorant. You're mixing up the talk and the clicks on social media for the real facts that you researched in your thesis. Okay, so this question was, which president do you think, and it was among all presidents who've done the most for Black Americans? Theo, he says it's Trump. And then he says, people call him a racist, but how do you actually know he's a racist? Theodore is 36, so I don't know what he was doing in 2015. I don't know what he was doing because that's almost 10 years ago now. Maybe when he was 26, he wasn't as into politics. But in 2015, when Trump was deciding to run, there were so many news stories about how he and his dad got brought against them the biggest housing prosecution in the state of New York for their racist housing policies on buildings that they owned. It was also brought up about how he said that the 5 boys that were arrested for raping that jogger and then later exonerated, how they never should have been exonerated. He called them animals, and he said they should have all gotten the death penalty. And he took out a newspaper ad to say this. But Theo's wondering why people think that Trump is a racist. Trump, at the beginning of his campaign, and again, this was in 2015, 16, so maybe Theodore wasn't as into politics back then, said Mexicans that were coming over the border were rapists and drug dealers. They weren't sending their best people. Trump, much more recently, right, during COVID, called it the Asian flu, even after there was news stories after news story about how Asian people were being attacked on the street, whether or not they were Chinese, from racial hate stemming from people thinking that those individuals are responsible for COVID. And Trump kept calling it the Asian flu. But Theodore is like, oh, you don't know Trump is a racist. Okay, Theo. So this question was, what do you think Democrats understand the least about Black Americans and specifically about Black men in America? And I want to talk about the first answer and the last answer. The first answer was that they assume every Black male youth is automatically a victim due to either systemic racism or factors beyond their control. And the last answer is it's the pandering to the Black race, thinking that we're all looking for a handout and feeling sorry for ourselves, whether when in fact we're capable and culpable. So if that's the way you feel about the way Democrats look at Black Americans, okay, fine. But I remember when Trump was running in 2015, 16, and he went into the Black community and he said, what do you have to lose by voting for me? Your communities are shit. Your children are all in jail or on drugs. Remember he went to the Black church and said that? So if you thought stereotyping of the Black community was the problem, why would Trump be your preferred candidate? Okay, this is where I think the ignorance really shows itself. What do you think the Republicans understand least about Black Americans and particularly Black men in America today? The first gentleman, Marlin, says equality. The moderator asks, how so? Us as minorities, it's hard in society, just basically coming up in general. We've been fighting for rights for years, and I don't feel as though they see that. Dylan, I would say opportunity. They have this mindset of up by the bootstraps, and that's definitely true in some ways. We can make things happen for ourselves. But I have a lot of friends that were born with a home already. They didn't have to do anything, and they already have a house. That doesn't happen in our world a lot. Republicans think, since many of us came up Democrats, they think, well, they'll never get our vote because our parents were Democrats and friends were Democrats. Whereas I'm looking at where the country is, and I'm way more conservative than I was just a few years ago. Okay, so let's look at Marlon and Dylan's answers. If you thought that the thing that the GOP doesn't understand about Black Americans is equality, and if you thought that the thing that the GOP doesn't understand about Black Americans is the systemic obstacles that have kept them from obtaining the wealth that allows a child to be born into a house which, after their parents die, they inherit already without having to do anything? If you really think that that's what the GOP doesn't understand about Black America, why are you voting for them? Why are you voting for them? No matter who the candidate is. Like what yeah, what do you think that Trump is going to do to turn that around? To make the GOP understand better these things that you say they don't understand? What? Okay, these are just funny. I'm just going to point out two that made me laugh out loud. Let's talk more about Donald Trump. When you think of Mr. Trump, what's the first words that come to your mind? And what's his name? Samuel said knowledgeable. Knowledgeable. This is a guy that took a hurricane poster and used a Sharpie to draw on it an area that actually wasn't in the hurricane path, because instead of listening to the climatologists and weather people that are on staff at the White House, he knew he was right. Is that the kind of knowledgeable you're talking about? This is the guy that told people, suggested people drink bleach during COVID. Is that the kind of knowledgeable you're talking about? And then Marlon said businessman. How do you go bankrupt running a casino if you're a good businessman? How do you go bankrupt running casinos if you're a good businessman? He was a failed businessman. That's why he had to go onto TV to pretend to be a businessman, because he wasn't actually a good businessman. Okay, so the moderator says, I want to ask you something I want to ask you about something that Donald Trump said during the campaign in March. My administration is delivering for African Americans like never before. No president has been there as much for our Black community, Trump said. We've talked a little bit about whether past presidents have delivered for the Black community. I'm interested in what you think about Donald Trump's claim. Is there anything that comes to mind for you specifically that Donald Trump has done? JD says he's been more vocal than other presidents about his intentions with HBCUs and jobs. Being more vocal about something and actually delivering it on it are two very different things. Biden actually delivered Build Back Better legislation, which took 50% of Black children out of childhood poverty. That's all I'm going to say about that. With Trump, I would very much say he's bold and courageous. If he says he's going to do it, he's going to do it. Oh, like the border wall? Oh, like infrastructure? Oh, like the border wall and making Mexico pay for it? Oh, like infrastructure week? Oh, like a better health plan than Obamacare he was going to deliver? Like those things? The gentlemen are asked, well, did you always like Trump? Or was there a particular moment when you decided, yeah, this is my guy? And the 57-year-old said something that blows my mind. Uh, I've always liked Trump. I've been doing music for the last 30 years, and I'm from Flint, Michigan. We listened to music coming up from New York. Donald Trump was around rappers who were in New York. He had his ear to the street. He knows the culture, and people don't see that. Donald Trump knows Black culture because he hung out with rappers. Are you sure he wasn't doing coke with them? I let's say that was completely true and that Trump was totally on point in the hip hop scene. That is not a criteria for somebody to be a president. And then listen to what Samuel 28 says. I've always liked Trump because he's an unfiltered man. He is someone who knows what he wants to do and someone who won't pretend to like what he doesn't like. And I love the fact that he's a very knowledgeable and experienced businessman. I won't go back into it, but how do you go broke? running a casino if you're a very knowledgeable and experienced businessman. He's 28. Maybe he doesn't know. I don't know. Crazy. So the school principal says he used to really dislike Trump. I'm assuming the school principal is a Muslim because Trump was attacking immigrants and was attacking people's religion. And this school principal is married to an immigrant, plus, I'm assuming, he's a Muslim. But then Trump got in office and he did so much good. This is a school principal. Trump put Betsy DeVos, somebody who literally had said, her and her brother Eric Prince, that they wanted to destroy public education. And like that was their goal, to tear it down. That's who he put in charge of the Department of Education. And a school principal said, oh, once he got in office, I saw that he did so much good. Where and has the GOP or Trump's rhetoric softened on Muslims? Has it softened on immigrants? If it has, I haven't heard it. The GOP as a whole and Trump in particular are just as nasty about immigrants and Muslims as ever they were. What is the school principal talking about? I need to check myself and realize that when I come across a Black person who is spouting this kind of thing, I have to be patient and reserved. I have to listen to them and try to interject facts when I can and try to encourage them to look at factual sources. Because this gentleman made a friend online who led him to do his own research. And I can only imagine the rabbit hole that this guy went down into to come out the other end, not liking Trump and then liking him instead. So the 88% of African American voters who are not going to support Trump have to really try to engage in a loving way, patient way with the 12% who are going to support Trump, because potentially some of them can be drawn back. Now, some of them are just saying these things because they just really hate women and really hate gays and trans people. And so Trump hates the same people they hate. So they're just with him for that reason. But that's not something that you would say in a focus group. But others are, their true feelings are expressed here. And some of these thoughts that they have are just like straight up ignorant. Trump isn't a racist. Yeah, okay. And they're getting their information from sources that are dubious. So we still have to try to reach these brothers. So the moderator asked the gentleman if there were any commentators or anybody that they listened to that helped change their mind about Trump or led them more towards being supportive of Trump. And one of them says that they worked in television for many years and that they worked with Trump and that he treated everybody on the set just fine. And there are many African Americans on the set and he didn't act racist towards them. If there were a whole bunch of African Americans in a place where I was doing a show and I didn't like African Americans, but I was surrounded by them, I might not show how much I dislike them in that space either. But then this one, Brandon says that he started following a journalist named Joshua Phillip, and that journalist writes for, wait for it, the Epoch Times. If the person is writing for the Epoch Times, they're not a journalist. Just how could this guy? So anyway, those are some of the dubious sources where some of these gentlemen are getting their information. That's a perfect example. So the moderator asked these gentlemen how they feel about Trump being a convicted felon, and two of them said it made him more relatable. I guess they're saying that he was falsely caught up in the criminal justice system the way many black men are. I don't know. I wish the moderator had asked him about the libel case where the court found that Trump was liable for being a sexual assaulter. I'd be really curious to hear what these black men have to say about that. Is there anything in America that has gotten better over the last 4 years that you'd at least give Biden some credit for? Nothing. Agreed. Okay. I, you could point to the alleviation of child poverty as a direct result of the Build Back Better Act, but I guess these men aren't interested in that. Or the news sources that they are paying attention to literally did not tell them that. I don't know which one it is. So these last two comments I find absolutely terrifying. The first one, I'm just going to read it. We want everybody to be decent people, but at the end of the day, we want to get the job done. We don't have time for emotions or pandering or whether someone's feelings get hurt. In an ideal world, we wouldn't want to hurt no one's feelings and have no one upset or upset no communities and things like that. But I just need a strong leader. That's all I need. The second guy. I think being a decent person is what everybody should be anyway, and that's not going to help the economy. That's not going to help us in wartime. But a strong leader is somebody that other countries fear. And Biden and the Democrats, they want to talk it out and do this and that. I'm ex-military, so I'm like, looky here. If you put the fear in somebody and say, look, we will bomb you if you come over here with that crazy stuff. These guys, what scares me about it is these guys are leaning towards authoritarianism anyway. That may be the underlying reason why they're attracted to Trump, because they really just want a strongman government, authoritarian type government anyway. They don't want consensus. They don't want a nation of 350 million people. We all have different views. We got to come together about how to run this country. They just want a strong guy at the top. And a lot of times, guys like that want to be the strong guy in their own house. Just saying. So, to wrap up, everybody's entitled to their own political views. I would just hope that those views are actually based on facts and, yeah, just facts. I know a gay guy. He knows that Trump he knows that the GOP and the overall are homophobic, but he voted for Trump twice because the tax cut that was given to him made a substantial difference in his material wealth. And for him, it was worth the trade off. His money and living in California insulated him from most of the homophobic things that were going on with the Trump administration. So the money was more important to him. I'm not going to say that I like that he did that, but at least it's based on facts. Trump did give a huge tax cut to the rich. This guy got money because of that tax cut. He's voting for Trump. Okay, fine. I know religious conservatives that really do not like trans people, don't think they should exist, and really do not like LGBTQ people. Honestly, don't think they're delusional or don't think they should exist either. The GOP is your party if that's how you feel. I know religious people who think abortion is the biggest sin in the world. The GOP is your party if that's how you feel. Those things are based on facts in that you have a value and the GOP is going in line with your value and is promoting legislation that's in line with your value. The stuff that these guys were talking about wasn't based on facts. It wasn't, Trump is not a good businessman. Trump did not do more than anybody else for the African American community. Like, that's just not factual. So, A, it makes me wonder again if these guys just aren't underlying authoritarians or underlying women haters, and they're just making up excuses why they want to vote for Trump. But B, it's also so makes it so important that we listen and figure out what it is these guys want in terms of policy, what they think is important, so it can be pointed out how Trump never promised he would do that, or the GOP really has traditionally not done that thing, so that they can see. And if they're fact averse, well, then we can't help them. But if they're just ignorant, like they don't know, then we just need to listen deeply and kind of just try to put some little facts in there. I'm concerned about the upcoming election, but nothing's written in stone at this point.